We are discussing the Renters' Rights Bill tonight and how to sell with tenants. So welcome to the webinar. If everybody can hear me, then the slides should be behind me. So if you're on a phone, you might not see the things exactly like on a computer. And my name is Bridget, and my tech support, Clemmy, she had no power, so she's struggling to log in. But Hema is here to help out until Clemmy gets here. And then just a few housekeeping rule things. Let me just, oh, sorry. There you are. So type the questions in, any questions that you have in the chat. If you are on a computer screen, just tap anywhere on a phone screen, just on the phone, just click on this on the screen and tap the chat icon like it shows in the thing. And if you swipe left and right, you can see different screens as well. If we lose connection or you have a problem with the sound, I just recommend you disconnect and then use the same link to join again. So while I'm talking, Clemmy or Hema, who is tech support, will add any relevant links in the chat. But everything should be on your screen. So as long as you can see the screen or hear me, because I know some people perhaps can't see very well, I've tried to make the slides as simple as possible, and I will say everything that is on the slides in case people can't see properly. Okay, so keep the questions coming in. The agenda and the ground rules. Well, I don't know what the ground rules are, but keep the questions coming in. And the purpose is to break down the Renters' Rights Act and its impact on landlords and property investors. I'll have a short 5-minute pulse, how it's going there, and then the Renters' Rights Act and what is going live on the 1st of May. So it's not far to go. And then what is the next phase? How to buy and sell without evicting tenants, and then a Q&A at the end. So stay right until the end and just put your questions in the chat. So more about us. We're estate agents in Croydon, and we serve the local South London area, all the way from Streatham down to the M25, and from Bromley in the east to Sutton in the west. But welcome to anybody from all over the country, because it's relevant to everyone. So don't worry. We are not here to sell you anything. We are just here to help landlords and investors stay up to speed with the latest developments, because they are around the corner, and we've had some really scary stats. Now, we've been having webinars every 3 months, and it's been really lovely to speak to so many of you. And there's a lot of repeat customers, so I really appreciate seeing some well-known faces and names. So over the last 30 years, I've been involved. I see it says 20 years, but actually I've been in the estate agency for 30 years. But I've run this estate agency for the last 20 years. And over the last 5 years, we've really dive deep into sales, because a lot of our landlords were selling. And so we are now in the position of helping our landlords buy a property, or normal people buy a property, moving in, having tenants move in, do the renovations, helping with the renovations, refurbs, and all that. So we do the full cycle, and it's really interesting to see the full cycle and not just the lettings. As lettings is not just collect the rent and fixing boilers, but we also need to be fully familiar with all 179 pieces of legislation. And we do block management, small block management as well. So we do see all sides of it. We do the whole cycle. Let me just go to the next slide. I have to. So this is a quick poll. If I can remember how to start the poll, let me just check that. This is just so that I get an idea of what your biggest concerns are, what your thoughts are. Answer honestly, no judgment. This is basically me just checking where the room is and what are you anxious about. And it's, so the options are learning about the new rules, rent arrears, giving notice, rent increases, pets and lets. Choose which one you are. You can choose many, but if you choose 1 or 2, then we can see who's feeling stressed about what. Let me just see how I can do this. Landlord poll. Okay, let me just launch. Okay, so you should see something on your screen now. And then if you could just pick whichever ones concern you most. Oh, thank you. I can see people answering. So not as people as I thought are worried about pets in lets And learning about all these new rules is like, it looks like the biggest concern. I'll give you a few more seconds and then we will close that. Okay, and then I'm going to end the poll because, okay, I'm going to end the poll and then we'll have a look at the results. So I'm going to share the results. So you'll see now on your screen what people said. So most people said that learning about all these new rules is their biggest concern. And I think the two biggest ones after that is giving notice and the rent increases. I didn't list all the new things because I thought that's going to take us for ages. But so I'm just going to save this, okay, so that I have that for future. And I'm going to close that. I hope I've closed it now. If I haven't, Emma, let me know if I haven't closed it. And I'll go to the next slide. So I'm just doing a quick market outlook. The rents are up by about 8% in our area. Look, every area is different. But in our area in general, I see throughout the country, a lot of people have said it's about 8%. In some areas, perhaps more, other areas less. Now, the stock was about 20% higher over the last few months. That is the lettings stock. But a lot of them came back as being unsold. So more, and that's where the stock came from. But unfortunately, this provided a more choice for the tenants, and the tenants applicants were only about 7% higher. So to avoid the risk of having an empty property, I would just, let me just move myself out of the way. I'm like in front of somebody there. Let me just see if I can. So the void risk, and the rent level, you have to weigh it up very carefully. So if you make your rent too high, then you run the risk of having an empty property. Effects on the sales prices. Let me just, okay, where am I? So some areas are standing still. I didn't go into the real figures because it gets a bit full on with stats, and so a lot of changes in the market because there's a lot of government changes. There's generation rent. So this is the sales prices we're talking about. Generation rent, there's less buyers. There's more people selling. 18% of the market apparently is landlords selling. And then what the Sherry stats is that 50% of properties don't sell in the first 8 weeks. And then after those 8 weeks, only 14% sell ever after that. In some areas, we're standing still because of this Renters' Rights Act that was just so long in the making. And then hopefully we will recover, just like Scotland recovered. They brought in similar things to the Renters' Rights Act many years ago, and their market really recovered after that. And then also the government says that affordable housing, they will build affordable housing, but I think the only way we're going to get affordable housing for anybody is if the costs of materials and labor is so high, and so affordable housing is not cheap. The only way that if buyers can make it more affordable is to take really long mortgages, or either having earnings of a lot more, but we can't tell our employers how much to pay them. So if we have 40-year mortgages, we can spread it over a longer period, even into retirement. And then the approval rate apparently is going to be increasing. They're going to increase the lending from 4.5 times to 6 times the salary. So borrow more for longer, and that's how they're going to make it affordable for people. So I'm going to be talking about the different phases, the Renters' Rights Act, and I think something got cut off there, phases and something. So phase 1 we've already had. That was on the 25th or on the 17th of December. That is where the local authorities gained more enforcement powers, including access to properties and penalties for non-compliance. I'm just going to have a quick look at my notes to see if I've said everything. So they basically just strengthened the local council enforcement, and rent repayment orders are now up to 24 months. Previously it was 12 months. So just imagine if you did something wrong and then the council pounced on the situation because the tenant gave you up, and then you are in a pickle that you have to pay this tenant back 24 months of their rent. Now, I don't think anybody who can afford that. And also they have the right to go into a property without a warrant and seize data and do inspections. I don't think they've realized their full powers yet, so they are still in a quite meek and mild at the moment, and they're quite helpful until they realize what they can do. And then the phase two. Now, this is what we're going to talk about tonight. Phase two. This is where all the major legal changes affecting the tenancy types, possession, risk management, and all tenancies will become assured tenancies from the 1st of May, requiring written statements and information leaflets for tenants. Now, I know some of you have sent me long lists of questions, and I'm sure we will go through most of them, and we will have lots of other webinars closer to the time, zooming in on certain bits of it. And then phase three is going to be late in 2026, and that is the rental database. Now, a lot of you have asked me about that, so don't worry about it yet. We will talk about that in our next webinar or the one after that. We do 4 webinars a year. I'm sure we'll touch on that. And then also the Ombudsman registration. We will deal with that also later in the year because that's also only scheduled for the end of the year. Phase 4, thank heavens, the minimum energy efficiency standards, MEES or EPCs as we know them more, they're only scheduled for 2035. Now, they are in the news quite regularly because they're changing all the rules and regulations and how EPCs will be done. But I think they will probably not be ready until 2035. So that gives us another few years. And the Decent Home Standards and RWAP's law will extend to the private rentals also after 2035. They are bringing it into the social housing, and I will see how that goes, because I think most problems actually appear in social housing. So I don't know why they are targeting us private landlords so badly. Like I said, December 2025, I mentioned that already. And what is the next one? Apologies for my garish artwork, but I couldn't resist it. I told ChatGPT, because you hear all these horrible stories on social media and they say, oh, don't worry about all these new rules. You don't have to worry about it. You can just call them a lodger, or do it on Airbnb. But they don't know that there's real restrictions on the number of days that you can Airbnb a property, especially in Croydon, 90 days a year, and that's it. So that holiday let loophole, I don't know, that doesn't exist where I am. And call them a lodger or a guest unless you live in a house. You can't do that. So be careful what and read on social media or even in the news. It's a load of rubbish. Don't fall for the scams. So what is really scary as it's 1 May is the end of fixed-term tenancies. So if you sign if your tenant moves in on the last day of April and you say, Mr. Tenant, we are now signing a tenancy agreement for 1 year, there on the 1st of May, that all goes back to zero and everybody's under the same rules from that day. 42% of landlords have not heard about the Renters' Rights Act. Now, it used to be Renters' Reform Bill under the previous document. Then the new government came in and they called it the Renters' Rights Bill. Then last year it went through Parliament and it's now called the Renters' Rights Act. Charles put his stamp on there and it's now law, and they're giving us an implementation schedule, and then 82% of landlords said that it won't affect them. Now, that is really scary because it will affect everybody. So be careful of rumors on social media. And this is the death of assured short-hold tenancies. Apologies for my artwork again. ChatGPT was very helpful. And I see there's some spelling mistakes in there. I can't even spell tenancy. And let me just have a look if I am, because I'm whizzing through these things and I'm sure I'm supposed to say a lot more. So I'm happy that you are all here because good landlords are not the target. Slop Sloppy admin is the target. So unfortunately, the law doesn't know the difference between sloppy and malicious. And I think when a landlord makes a mistake, like some of our members of parliament have made several mistakes, and the law doesn't know the difference between sloppy and malicious. So they just assume you were malicious and you did whatever you did on purpose. So a story is, if you have the wrong address on a gas certificate, or the landlord is messaging the tenant direct and it's going sideways and it's becoming a little bit too personally or too pushy and it's overstepping that boundary of becoming threatening, you have to be so careful with that going forward. Before the 1st of May, all existing tenancies will need to be given a statutory notice, which is in draft at the moment. So the document has been drawn on, and we need to issue this to all our tenants at a specific time. And we'll have a time period. And landlords that are our clients, don't worry about it. We will fully help you with everything. People who are with other agencies, they should be helping you with it. And anybody that's a self-managing landlord, feel free to reach out. We will be offering short 15-minute one-to-ones throughout our thing. So if you want to have a chat with me about something that you don't really want to raise here, or something specific that's to you, then please feel free to reach out. The headline changes that matter day to day. So the deadline is 1st of May. So the tenancy process is going to be changed, and what tenants must be given and how you must prove that you've given it to them. The notice framework changes, and we will go through those in a minute. If you want to sell, if you want to do the rent increases, that will all change. And then there's that enforcement bite in the background, unfortunately. And on the 1st of May, all the old style tenancies will convert to the new style. So if you said no pets, and if you said, I will be increasing the rent every year, think again. This is all new style now. So no more Section 21. Now, I know you said on the poll, a lot of you were concerned about that. So let me just open my notes and see what. So abolition, don't like that word. They're doing away with Section 21. Abolition sounds a little bit too posh. So what landlords can and cannot rely on now. So no fault route is no longer an option. So the last chance you will have to serve your Section 21, which is a no fault eviction notice, in case you don't know. Because I spoke to one of the people yesterday on the phone. He says, oh no, he knows all about the law. He knows all about Section 21. So I said, yeah, Section 21 is only going to be with us until the 30th of April. And don't wait, please don't wait until the last day to serve that Section 21 on your tenant if you want to get your property back. I'm not going to say get rid of your tenant, because hopefully you all have good relationships with your tenant. And then I would advise, if you are going to serve notice on your tenants because you want the property back to sell or whatever reason, do that middle of April at the latest, because you'll need 3 working days to serve the notice. Just don't wait till the 30th of April. It just doesn't work. The new reality is you must have evidence-led and process-led evidence. So audit trails are going to be super, super important. And I know a lot of people, they're good landlords, but they just don't keep a record of stuff that they've done, the date of when they sent the gas certificate to their tenant and things like that, or evidence that the tenant refused access. So practical protections, communication records, get your legal cover in place, legal and rent protection cover. We insist on that for all our tenancies that we manage. It's not worth having a £40,000 arrears, rent and legal bill. Who can afford that? So if you have your rent and legal cover, that will at least make you sleep easy at night, especially because our notice times are going to be extending a bit. Now, in reality, a lot of our tenants are good tenants. We don't really want to get rid of our tenants that regularly. It's just when they are misbehaving. But stats show that actually Mostly, about 90% of tenants moving are not because the landlord wants them out, but mostly is because the tenant actually gives notice. So the majority of moves are tenants initiated when they give notice. And they're either relocating closer to work or school, they're moving out of the area, they're scaling up, they're moving back to mom and dad. That's happening. Death or divorce. And what's really a good news is that 18% of tenants are buying. And that to me means people are growing, and generation rent, as they call this generation, they are proving us wrong, and there are people that are buying. So that's a really good news. So the new rent increase rules, I've touched on that. So sorry about ChatGPT. This is Mayday, Mayday. Do not be asleep. Speak to me, discuss with me your greatest concerns, and we will help you as much as you can. Oh, I'm dripping all over the place here. Oh yes, and just remember to put all your questions in the chat. I will go through the questions halfway through, and then right at the end, most of them. So put your questions in the chat, and then Clemmy will summarize them, and I will answer as many as I can. I've got a list here of questions that people sent, but I made sure that I included it in my presentation. So thank you for those people who fed back to me the things. How do I move myself down a bit? Yes. No, I don't want to be there because then I can't move the buttons. So from 1 May, no more Section 21. From 1 May, no more tenancy agreement, ASTs like we know it. Let me just see. Yeah, I spoke about the Section 21 and don't let it. Now, for the new rent increases, I have a lovely video of Hema explaining how to do the new rent increases. But unfortunately, because we're quite tight on time today, because there's a lot to go through, I'm just going to have to quickly summarize it for you. And then if you really want the video, I can send it to you or send you the link for it on YouTube. So basically, if you were just phoning up your tenant in the past and just saying, oh, Mr. Tenant, I think I want more rent now, or you just wrote him an email, from the 1st of May, whether it's an old style tenancy or a new style tenancy, you have to use a specific form. We haven't received the form yet. It's probably going to be it's going to be form section S13, but it's probably going to be changed because it's going to have changes made to it. So no, it'll need to be a formal notice, and you'll need to serve it in a specific way. And then the notice, previously we could serve 1 month notice, but now from 1st of May, it'll have to be 2 months notice. So if you want to increase the rent now, do it now if you can. And just Section 21, if you want your property back before the 1st of May, do that now, and also increase your rent now. If you don't know how, let us know, we'll help you. And then, so it'll be 2 months. So I think what the courts have done is they've kicked the ball forward, because they'll have 1 month's rest peace, and then in month 2, everything will start kicking off. And then you can only serve it once a year. But the tenant has got the right to go to the Tier 1 tribunal. At the moment, they've got that right as well, but nobody does it, because the Tier 1 tribunal can make the rent higher or lower. But from the 1st of May, they can only make the rent higher. So obviously, all tenants are going to apply for this. And then the rent increase doesn't kick in until the tribunal has made a decision. So I think they're going to be so overwhelmed that... So I think it'll be good for you to communicate with your tenants and come to some agreement, and then you serve them the proper notice at a higher amount, and then you agree to the lower amount. Or I don't know if there's going to be a whole strategy behind all these things. So rent arrears and rent reviews. Arrears, respond early. The rent arrears is going to be still Section 8, similar to what it is. So if your tenant becomes in arrears, at the moment, they need to be 2 months in arrears. Under the new rules, after 1 May, it'll be 3 months in arrears. And then currently, if your tenant is 2 months in arrears, you can go to court. You can serve him notice after 2 months, and after 2 weeks, you can go to court. Under the new rules, he needs to be in arrears by 3 months, and then you can serve him the notice, and the notice will have to be 1 month before you go to court. So the whole process has been extended from 2 months, 2 weeks to 4 months. So it's going to be crucial to have your rent guarantee and legal cover in place so that you don't, because 4 months without rent is a huge amount. No, not everybody wants to not pay rent. Sometimes things happen to tenants, lose their job, get injured. We've had people in that Croydon tram accident that lost limbs and couldn't work for several months. It's really important to get that rent guarantee insurance in place, and just speak to us and we'll help you. Rent arrears, respond early and document everything. The new rules, like 3 months in arrears and an extra 2 weeks before applying to the court. And rent reviews, also evidence-based, calm, professional and predictable. No threatening the tenant, please. We all get hot under the collar. Oh, I think next up is one of my favorite drawings. So landlords need to evolve and adjust. Now this dodo didn't evolve and he didn't survive and he became extinct. So I think landlords don't want to be like dodos. We want to adjust and evolve. And in 1988 or in 1990, whatever, the new rules came in. There was a lot of adjustment then and we survived. And I think it'll be next year when we have this webinar, hopefully we'll say, wasn't so bad, was it? The referencing is going to be a lot more strict because we just can't afford to let people who are not suitable into our properties. Discrimination. Okay, let me just move myself out of the way here. So discrimination is not allowed. You can't say no DSS. Advertisement, there's restrictions on what you can say in your advertisement. So even if you put it on the local corner shop thing, you can't say no DSS, no dogs, no whatever. Can't say no DSS, no, you can't say no kids. But you can say no on the grounds of affordability. So if whoever is applying for your property, don't say, oh, we don't accept DSS. You have to train whoever answers that phone very carefully. But if you say, okay, so what are your earnings? Because our affordability criteria is X, then if they answer that and it's a little too little, but then also keep a record of that person applying. Because if he runs to the council and says, so-and-so was discriminating and he said he won't accept me because I'm DSS. No, you said no because of them not earning enough. Their income wasn't enough. And you can also say no to overcrowding. So if you've got like a couple with 3 kids wanting to move into a studio flat, just read the council's regulations and you can say no on the basis of that and say, sorry, this flat is not suitable for that because of the council's rules, blah, 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 blah. And let's hope we can find those rules because we'll be falling back on those rules very much. And we'll also be falling back on those rules like a girl older than a certain age is not allowed to sleep in a room younger than so we can start quoting those rules as well. Let me just see where I am. You can say no to pets in a way, but pets is not discrimination. It's just a different subject. Let's go to say no to pets in a minute. Renting with pets. Now, I'm going to move myself out of the way so you can see little Geschnoofels' face. Oh, he's so cute. So tenants have the right to request a pet in writing. Now, if you read very carefully, tenants have the implied right to ask for a landlord for consent to have a pet, but not applicants. Applicants are not tenants yet. So I think it will be very beneficial to read the rules when they come out very carefully, because we might have a getaway clause to say no pets, and then they say, oh, it's illegal. You can't say no. And say, no, you're not a tenant yet. You're not a tenant yet. So therefore, I can still say, sorry, you can't move a Great Dane into a studio flat on the 10th floor. Pina, I see you like that. The only tenants have this right. Landlords can still say no to pets on the advert. I don't know. We are very careful at what we say on our adverts. It's when they call us, then we say, oh, do you have a pet? Make a note. And then, oh, we'll ask if it's suitable for 20 cats in a studio flat. I'm just naming all these ridiculous examples. But now the rule is the landlord must respond in 28 days with his results. So he can't say, "I'll think about it," and just ignore it. It'll go away. Stick your head in the sand and act as if it never happened. You can't do that. You have to respond with an answer within 28 days. Once again, it's important to make note of when you receive if you said, it needs to be in writing. So if they called you and said, "I want a dog," say, okay, put it in writing. And if they haven't replied, then you perhaps can put them in writing and say, "I have not received anything in writing and therefore I'm not going to answer you." What is next? Pets and advertising. You cannot blanket advertise no pets or no benefits, but you can still refuse in specific circumstances, but it must be reasonable and it must be documented. So there's a request, response time frame, and a decision trail. That one. I want to say a little bit more about the pets things, because there is some blocks don't allow pets in the building and it's on the lease, no pets. Now that will still stand. So you can use that as a good reason. The block of flats does not allow pets because they've got a lift. Or also a good reason is going to be to say the Animal Welfare Act. That's going to be a very popular act in the future. You can't have a pet locked up for 18 hours in a flat while somebody goes to work, or I don't know if he works that long, but say 12 hours, 3 hours travel, 8 hours work. I can't add up today. So there is the Animal Welfare Act. We're going to start reading that very carefully. The pet damage insurance, unfortunately, they did not include it in the new Renters' Rights Act because we were hoping that we could force our landlords, our tenants, to take out pet damage insurance. And unfortunately, that didn't go through. But be careful also of assistants, dogs and cats, and if they say, oh, it's for emotional support, then just say, please provide the evidence of that, because a person can't just decide that's for emotional support. They need to have it recommended to them by a medical professional. Yeah, that I've mentioned the 28 days. And obviously, it's so important to do inspections. Every 6 months we do inspections and we have a full record of what the rooms look like, because tenants get up to all sorts of mischief. They move in lodgers, they move in dogs, they suddenly run a dog sitting from their lounge with cages in the lounge all over. It smells horrendous. So in the tenancy agreement, it should say you cannot run a business from home because your insurance doesn't cover that. Also, I can't even remember now what I wanted to say, but pet damage insurance. We recommend that if you can find a product, and we're looking all the time, find a product that the landlord can take out if he knows his tenant has got a pet. But then you need to have a proper inventory done at the beginning, and you need to have regular, proper inspections done so you can prove that the condition of the property is deteriorating because of the pet. Now, the next one is ban on rental bedding. Now, I've never really come across that. I must say the tenants don't really stand in a queue. Yeah, we are, and say, oh, I'll offer you £100 more. So landlords and agents must specify the asking rent in writing. So in writing on the listing or the offer. So you don't take or accept more. So if somebody says, oh, because we used to add an extra £25 for a pet. So yes, you want a pet? Okay, pay an extra £25 a month more, because you are limited by the amount of deposit you can take. So you really want to be able to in advance make up for whatever extra cleaning you have to do at the end, or replacement of kitchen doors, because 5 weeks rent as a deposit is not going to cover it. But don't accept a penny more. You cannot encourage or invite an applicant to offer higher rent. So if you've got 2 or 3 and they're up against each other, you can't say, make me a better offer. You can't say that. That is encouraging and inviting. And then also, you cannot accept more than 1 month rent upfront. So 1 month rent is only the rent and the deposit. You can no longer ask for 6 months rent upfront. You can no longer, so if you want to do that before the 1st of May, you can keep that. I don't think you'll have to give it back. But on the 1st of May, anything after the 1st of May, do not take a penny more than 1 month rent, because you will not be allowed to. We don't normally do that. But I know that tenants with bad credit history, they might offer to pay 6 months upfront. Yeah, but that won't be allowed anymore. So this is the end of the Renters' Right Act Phase 2. So just put questions in the chat. I'm going to also tell you about our tenancy checklist. Now, a lot of you have already seen it. It's a tenancy checklist. We give it various names. Let me just see what else we call it. Sometimes we call it a compliance health check. It's a tenancy compliance checklist. So if you've got a tenancy and you can go through, tick, this is the property address, this is the landlord name, this is the tenancy start date, is there a mortgage? And it's several pages long. So you just tick, 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 and then you know you are at least have got all the documents. There will be some difficult questions asked. Have you served the right to rent documents at the right times? And if you don't know the law, you probably won't know what the right times are. Yeah, so in a minute, I'm going to bring up a survey to request so that you can ask for this checklist and I can send it to you. And you can either say, yes, I want it, or no, I don't need it. And there's also going to be an appointment that you can book with me. So I'll bring up a QR code in a minute, and you can either book the chat on there, or you can, on the survey, just say, I want to book a chat. If you're not into QR codes, then you could just tick the thing and just say. So let me just see how I bring this up. Let me just, yeah. I don't even know if Clemmy is on the call. So if you need any advice regarding possession and notice, rent arrears, pets, advertising, or tenanted sales, then or other things, book a call. Let me just bring up that little thing. Where is this? Balls and quizzes, Udo. No, I'm not going to be able to. Oh, back. There you are. Yes. Okay. So basically what it's going to ask you is, if you want the landlord's tenancy compliance checklist, the one that the tick, if you say yes, just choose yes or no. And then if you want to book a free one-to-one chat, and it's for our customers and people who are with other agents, or self-managing landlords, or investors, or if you want to sell or buy, or for anybody. So if you want to book a free one-to-one chat with me, then just, can you all see it? Or can't you see it? Okay, you can see it. Okay. So just choose it and then just put your name at the bottom and your email address. Otherwise, I don't know who's wanted what. And in the meantime, I will go to the next slide as well. No, it's probably now hiding the QR code, is it? Yeah. Anyway, oh, I'm going to go to the questions. I'm just going to see if Clemmy, my tech support, is here and whether she's summarized. Good. Okay, I've made Clemmy co-host a bit late because she was without power. So I'm glad she could join. And then if she could just summarize these questions for me. Otherwise, we might have to go to the next, scroll through this. I've also got these questions to go through. So one of the questions I see is, would the estate agent be responsible for updating the rent agreement as per Renters' Rights Act? There will be no new tenancy agreements issued. All tenancies will automatically, you don't need to reissue any tenancy agreements unless it's a new tenancy from scratch. They'll all become periodic automatically. I've answered most of them. Okay, I see Clemmy did summarize them. Thank you very much. Do I need to issue a new tenancy agreement because of the new law? No, you don't have to. All old tenancies will automatically become the new one. And that's why we have to serve these documents on the tenants, just to make them aware of their rights. If you're going to sell a property, do we need to issue a new tenancy? No, don't issue a new tenancy at all. If you are in an existing tenancy, just let it roll on the 1st of May, because then your 1 year would have started before. If you issue a new tenancy on the 1st of May, your 1 year exclusion period will start on the 1st of May. and you will have to wait until the end for a whole year before you can sell your property. So if you've got an existing tenancy, no, don't reissue one. If Section 21 is served, say the 15th of April, will that be binding upon the tenant? Yes, if you've served it legally. And if he hasn't moved out, you've got until the end of July to take it to court. If you miss that deadline, sorry, that's gone for the rest of its life. So if you haven't applied to the court before the end of July to get your tenant out, then, and then can you increase the rent when you have served Section 21? We never recommend that, because I'm going to end the poll now. Are you still answering this? Okay, I'm ending the poll in a minute. Can you increase the rent? No, we would not recommend that, because why would you be saying, I want to end it, and then suddenly increase it? Do that before you serve the Section 21. You increase the rent first, and then you serve the Section 21. But if you are in the first year of your tenancy, you can't increase that. Yes, and the tribunal can only make the rent higher going forward, so the tenants cannot, no, that it cannot be, it cannot be reduced. No, it can be reduced. So the tribunal cannot make it higher, but it can only reduce it. Did I say it wrong earlier? Apologies. I was sorry, but sorry, the other way around. Okay. And then will the rent guarantee legal cover pay for those 3 months before you can start the process? Yeah, they will have some clauses to protect themselves, and they might say exclusion 3 months, but it depends on which provider you use. Ours is quite good, and it covers it for 15 months, and it retrospectively pays to the 2 months currently. I don't know if it'll continue doing that. And then it pays after the eviction to fix the property up as well. So it's a really good one. I'm going to stop here with the questions now, because we've got a lot dead on time. Nice one. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to, so I don't know why they call it a poll, but anyway, and I'm going to close that. Yes, and you can advertise. I see a question just popped up. Yes, you can advertise for more and negotiate down for a good tenant if they ask, but you cannot negotiate up. Okay, I'm just going to shut this, and you're going to see me in my natural habitat. And then I'm going to share the next slides. Okay, so that is the same chat thing. So let me just move myself out of the way. Anybody with huge techie skills, that is the QR code with me, without me being in front of it. And that is also just asking for the chat, if you want to book a chat. And then the next one. So we are now going into the, let me just say, sorry, I just need to find, no, yes. Okay, I just need to know where I am. So this is the biggest property investing opportunity in history. Some people say that. And you can assess your own situation and decide if that is for you or not. Can I sell? And then because of the long waiting for new tenancies, you'll have to wait a full year before you can ask your tenant to leave because you want to sell. And which means that we have to think outside the box now. You know, what if you want to sell? You have to sell. What if you need to sell because you're retiring or you want to emigrate or divorce or something? Anything can happen, and you want to sell. But you can sell with tenants still living there. There's no legal requirement to evict before selling, and you cannot evict. Under the new rules, you cannot evict. And so it's a quicker, smoother transaction if a buyer is another landlord, and it avoids the hassle and the cost of ending the tenancy, because there's a lot of advantages for a buyer who buys a tenanted property if he wants an investment property. If he obviously wants to live there, that's a different story, because he will need to realize that there are restrictions on that tenancy, and he can't just say, oh, I've bought the property, I'm going to kick you out, because that will not be allowed. That tenancy needs to run its full year before anybody can ask a tenant to move out. But what to look out for is, are the rent values out of whack? Is compliance isn't cheap, so check the compliance. And usually if you buy a property that is fully tenanted, then that removes the need for having to renovate the property before you can find tenants. So investors, what should we wait to buy? No, Now I'm talking to investors here, but you as landlords wanting to sell, or you as people who are living in a property that you want to move out of and let it. So this is all applicable to everyone. Professionals will make money in every market, and amateurs will try and time the market, but there's no such thing as a good time or a bad time. And we are about to see the biggest house price increases in a generation, because like in Scotland, we are now over this Renters' Rights Act stuff that they've been dragging out for 7 years. And I think we're going to be able to start moving forward. And investors, big companies are investing. Smaller investors are still a little bit hesitant, but we've got a lot of properties that are very interesting, and I will tell you about a few of them. So what does it all mean? It's a great opportunity for landlords to sell, if that's what's in your plan, and for investors to buy. So because there are going to be less rogue or untrained landlords, because with so many rules around, you cannot afford to be an untrained landlord anymore. So low supply is pushing the rents up because a lot of landlords are exiting out of the market. It's pushing rents up, so that's good for investors. But also more landlords are selling, which is pushing the sales price down, which is good for investors as well. And then there's media fear. It's if you can read between the lines, and it's really difficult to make a decision, but it can create big opportunities for those who are educating themselves. Now, who would buy a property with tenants? We think, really? Now, these buyers are actively looking for turnkey investments. So, because even if they don't really want the tenant as such, if they don't want to keep the property for the rest of its life with a tenant in, but if they buy, say, an end of terrace with great development potential, and they've got a tenant in there, once they own it, they can then start the planning permission, they can have time to plan, they have time to renovate, the renovation and the plan, do everything, because it takes a long time to get past these bloody council planning permissions and building regs. So once you're the owner, you're in a much better position, and you're getting rent in. And you can always tell your tenants, look, I'm planning to renovate this property and you will need to move out. And then hopefully they will move out whenever you want them. If you serve them notice, you can serve them notice if you are really renovate that property, not just a lick of paint. You can't kick a tenant out because you're going to put a new bathroom in. All these people talk rubbish when they say, oh, just put a kitchen in. Then you can say, oh, yeah, you redeveloped the property. No, a new kitchen is not redeveloped. If you are bashing walls down and reconfiguring it and making an HMO out of it, that is a different story. And then there will be no need to market for new tenants. So from day one, that investor will have tenants in there, and then he can do whatever he's planning to do. But there are some buts. So I went through this. Avoid costly vacant periods for sellers. No refurb needed before selling, before letting. I would say that's letting. Keep your tenants happy, less stress, because from the beginning, you just involve them and say, look, Mr. Tenant, I need to sell, but I'm not going to kick you out. All I want is your help, and I'm going to find a nice, good landlord that will keep on looking after you. And we normally manage the tenancy as well. So then they know they're just going to be dealing with us anyway. So it's going to be no difference. And the property is marketed discreetly. So it's not on Rightmove. It's not on Zoopla. It's not on the market. It doesn't have a for sale sign out there. It's discreetly marketed to our investor list. And there's a VIP list where people get first dibs on good properties according to their spec. And people buy for different reasons. You say, oh, but Croydon, Sutton, Bromley, those are not investment areas. People would be buying for their son that wants to go to university in so many years, or as somewhere just to park their money, for all sorts of reasons. So for buyers, it's instant rental income from day one. But the big thing is they have proof that there are reliable tenants already in place. And that is what the seller must provide. So if you've just moved in a tenant on day one and then say, oh, this is a good tenant, a month later, you haven't got a good track record yet. So I always advise, wait a few months, make sure you've done everything in your power to make sure that tenant has moved in, the compliance is 100%, the property is tenancy ready, everything is up to spec, and there's not going to be a council person walking in there and giving huge fines. And then there are often lower upfront costs for buyers, like they don't have to worry about reletting and refurbs. How we handle the process. Now, it's a tenant aware valuation. We check the rent and we check the compliance. Now, we're going through a process for a flat in Crystal Palace at the moment for one of our landlords who wants to sell. And the tenant is not aware at this stage. We are just going through the compliance and the IDs and the anti-money laundering checks and all those checks to set up a pack. And then we will be quietly marketing to the investor market behind the scenes. The tenant might not even know about it. Then eventually, when a buyer says, okay, I know I'm in China or I know I'm far away, but I would like to send a valuer there or somebody just to make sure that the property actually physically exists and it's not some scam. And then the viewings are handled respectfully. And that's when we are there to hold the tenant's hand and say, look, this is not a risk to you, your home. You can stay here. These buyers want to take over from your landlord. Then the buyer receives the tenancy documents and the full rent history pack. And then the sale completes with the tenant staying put and no disruption. We do all the section whatevers that the solicitors always forget about. We do that all for the buyer and the seller, and we make sure that the tenancy can just stay as it is. It doesn't need to change name. So this is the process map. So we prepare the tenancy pack and do the compliance audit. Now, the compliance audit is really important. Then we communicate with tenants, the buyer, we qualify them first. We don't take buyers onto our list without checking that there are really buyers. Because everybody wants to buy a property, sit over drinks at Christmas, and then they say, oh yeah, I'll buy a property. And then they approach us and say, okay, show me you've got the money for the deposit. And who will be your lender? So those buyers are relegated to one day perhaps, but not high. Then the viewings access for pre-inspections, the offer, conveyancing, lender, value, we all handle that. And then the completion with the tenant intact. And throughout, we advise that we manage that whole tenancy because then the tenant doesn't feel anything. So buying a tenancy property, the investor checklist. Now, he must have the tenancy docs to review. If anything is out of whack, it needs to be fixed. The rent level needs to meet the market level quite. Now, if your tenant has been there for 10 years, and you haven't increased the rent for 10 years, now if you're thinking of selling, and this will be a route for you, this is the time that you need to say, I need to unfortunately increase the rent to market level, otherwise I won't be able to sell. No investor in their right mind is going to buy a property with the rent level way below because he's buying money, income generation, unless he then becomes the baddie and increases the rent on this tenant and they leave and he says, yippee, I've got my property back and I can now redevelop it. So I don't know, that might be another strategy for another day. But then you've always got the risk of the tribunals. So what if the tribunal says, oh, Mr. New Landlord, we're not going to raise it to market, although they're supposed to. Yeah. So condition and future compliance costs, if there are regular inspections where the condition of the property, there's no use looking at what the condition of the property was when you bought it 10 years ago and the tenant has been there living there. We need to know what the condition is today. So you haven't done inspections. This is the time to send us in to do that inspection. And then the insurance and lender stance, that is a really good level because they see then proof of rent. It's not just, oh, I think I'll get 1,000. I need a mortgage of X. You know how much you're getting for that property. That tenant is in there and it's from day one. And it's not some dodgy property with the kitchens ripped out. The common deal killers is missing compliance docs. We can fix it. There's certain things that we cannot fix, but missing compliance docs, usually we can fix most of it. Low rents can be fixed. The tenant not briefed. If a tenant hears that you are selling via the grapevine, that is an instant killer, because he'll panic. It happened to one of our properties. The tenant panicked, gave notice, and is moving out at the end of this month. Thank heavens the landlord's buyer is ready to complete around the end of this month as well. So he was lucky. But what if he hadn't found a buyer? He would have had to wait until he finds a buyer. And the risk is we've had properties stand empty for 6 to 12 months because the deals fall through. It's not the buyers that are so bad these days. It's actually the banks that are downvaluing the property. So if you've got an empty property that you're selling and a buyer offers on it, you accept the offer, both of you are happy. He goes to his lender and the lender says, no, the property's not worth that. What do you do? He suddenly doesn't get his mortgage, so he can't go ahead. And then also a buyer's misunderstanding about tenanted. Now, I've touched on that before, because if your buyer says, oh yes, I'll buy the property with the tenants in, he mustn't think that he can get rid of the tenant under any circumstances, because unless he's selling it, he will not be able to give the tenant notice. Or if he's redeveloping it, but redeveloping as in proper building control, planning permission, totally unlivable. Not just new central heating or new bathroom or new kitchen. Or if there's a price mismatch between the landlord and the investors have got their own calculations, whatever they're buying the property for, and the landlord might have emotional attachment to the property. He might have lived there himself. The worst landlord is usually the landlord that lived in the property, because he doesn't look at that property as an investment and he needs to make decisions because you're still emotionally attached to that property. You can remember when that was my bathroom. I kept it so clean. And you go in there and you see all these tenants. They are not keeping it clean, the mold all over. Yeah, I've been there. So what does this all mean? It's a great opportunity. So if you are, once again, book a chat. I'm going to bring up another survey and then we're going to tackle those questions. I'm going to move myself a little bit. So are you buying or selling? What is your portfolio plan? Is there a compliance gap check? Have you done a compliance gap check? We could do that for you. Rent positioning, a sensibility check. I went to a property the other day and she said, oh yeah, I think we can get 1.4 million. I don't know, like three one-bedroom flats. I don't know where the 1.4 million comes from. It's not central London, but yeah. Tenanted sale options, if relevant, because we do normal sales as well. We vacant sales and all those. And how can you benefit? Property is a people business and it's a collaboration is the key to success in 2006 and beyond. Here's the same old QR code again if you want to book. Where's the next one? And then I've got a last one. Our next live webinar is on Tuesday, the 12th of May at 7 p.m. And we'll then because it's going to be after the 1st of May, we'll tackle then how it went, what tips we've picked up, what is coming the end of the year, and we can start preparing for the next year. So let's go through I'm just going to bring up the next one. I don't know. Let's have a look if that's the right one. Yes, it is. So have a look at this. Anybody who wants to invest, yes, please send me the calendar link so I can book myself in, or scan the QR code. It doesn't matter. And then I'll start doing the questions. Now, Clemmy has kindly summarized it for me. Thank you very much, Clemmy. Really glad you could join after your power cut. So we were at, if Section 21 is served 15 April, that's binding on the tenant. We've answered that question. And then the tribunal can only make rent. Yeah, thank you for that one. I made the mistake of saying the tribunal can only make it lower, not higher. Will the rent guarantee and legal insurance pay from 3 months? We will see what they are doing, because obviously they need to look after their profit margins as well. This is a huge risk for companies, but hopefully it will not be unaffordable to take out the rent guarantee. And then if a rent increase is agreed, but the tenant and landlord continued paying and the challenge the increase by applying. Okay, I think what I hear there is that if a tenant and landlord spoke and they agreed And yes, they must wait until that. If that tenant takes it to tribunal, you cannot start applying the new rent on that tenant, even though you physically, verbally agreed with that tenant. But if you verbally agree with the tenant, you serve then the notice and they don't take it to a tribunal, then after 2 months or 3 months, they will be able to start paying that. So but just don't go to tribunal because that will put a huge delay on it. The deposits will stay the same, 5 weeks. We don't see that changing. There is a big petition and I will send it to you because there is a petition that we're asking for 6 weeks because of the pet stuff, and I will send you that link to that petition. It's on 11,000. The other day when I filled it in, it was 9,000. So at least hopefully it will be mentioned in Parliament. And then, can you advertise more and negotiate down for a good tenant if they ask? Yes, I answered that one. Yes, you can. If a rent review falls due on the 1st of May, is 1 month notice? No. If your tenancy ends, the fixed term tenancy ends on the 30th of April, and your new periodic starts on the 1st of May, then that 2 months, mind you, yeah. I don't know, you can perhaps the 1 month before the tenancy expires serve the increased notice if it's not a new tenancy. Well, I'll have to think carefully about that. If my tenant has a guarantor, should I still take out? Definitely. You should still take out rent guarantee cover, rent guarantee and legal cover, because it's a legal fees. It's not just the rent. That legal cover is 100,000, and you think, oh, that's we're going to get to 100,000. We've had cases where it's 40,000 pounds just in legal fees. Let me just shut this down so you can see me. It's not just the rent guarantee. It's not just the rent. It's not about the rent. It's about the legal fees. Because you've got solicitors dealing with it. You don't have to worry. You don't have to go to your local guy who knows nothing about evictions or the Renters' Rights Act. You've got professionals dealing with it right from the word go. And because when we give rent guarantee to our landlords, rent cover, we manage the whole process. We send them the documents they need. So the landlord doesn't have to do anything. So what about the rent deposit if you're not sure if the tenant paid one as it came via the council? You would have known about it because you would have had the obligation to safeguard it. So if it came via the council 13 years ago, look on the tenancy agreement, it will be mentioned there somewhere. A council usually gives a 1-year bond at max. They wouldn't take a deposit. Yeah, so if you didn't receive a deposit and safeguarded it, you are in trouble. If you want to increase the rent to take effect from June of this year, what is the process, please? June is when the existing contract ends, which I know no longer. It's a 2 months, 2 months, I get confused. 2 months notice to do the rent increase on the formal Section 13 form and served in the right way. I want to increase the rent to take effect from June. Okay, I heard you need to send your tenant a fact sheet. Yes, we will get all that. So the tenants need to be informed of what the new rules are. We must make sure that we serve it on each tenant, and they can't share an email address, and it needs to be served in certain ways. So be careful. If you've got a letting agent, they should be doing it for you. We do it for all our landlords, and if you're a let-only landlord and you manage your own properties, you need to just be careful that you are fully up to speed. And there will also be, like, we've got licensing coming in Croydon, wonderful, which will just be a total duplication of all the Renters' Rights Act database. And the ombudsman, I think, is quite a good thing, especially for let-only landlords, because a tenant doesn't have anywhere to go. But that is at the end of 2026. There will be certain things that we need to send. It's in draft at the moment, and it's a good sign that it is in draft already, because when there were some new laws coming in 1997, I think they didn't issue any documents until the day before, and it was Good Friday, and it was a total disaster. If you had tenants moving in on the Good Friday, you didn't have the documents. So if the rent increase agreed by tenant landlords and the tenant continue paying, okay, so that one we have the challenge, the increase. I don't know what the tribunal will, if you can prove to the tribunal, say, look, this tenant has started paying the new rent and now it's suddenly contesting it because it wants to bring the rent down. And you'll have to adhere to the rent. You have to repay all that rent that you got as a rent increase. Okay, so the landlord insurance, does landlord insurance cover? It depends which landlord insurance. It's a special rent guarantee and legal cover. It's not your building insurance because that only covers you if the building catches fire or there's a huge flood. It doesn't cover you when the tenant can't pay the rent for any reason. So if the tenant, yeah, I think the tenant will have a limited time to challenge the rent through the tribunal. There will be a cut-off date after which he can't. But he can wait till the last second of the second month and then he can put in his claim. And is it better to get council tenants now? I don't know. We did research on in the early days when we had a mixture of types of tenants. And we found that unfortunately with the council type of tenant, we had more problems with mold, more problems with antisocial behavior, neighbors complaining, dogs running down the road, stealing meat from Tesco's, getting locked up in doggy jail. And then they really, Bernard, I see you like that. Yeah, from past experience, you have to just filter them. And unfortunately, council tenants, depending on which sort of thing, if they provide you the tenant, then go through the same due diligence that you would have done if you had a guy that is applying off the street. If they are giving you a lease and they guarantee the rent and they take over the management, yeah, by all means, go for it. But if you need to manage it and you need to be called out in the middle of the night or your letting agent, no, thank you. If evicting a tenant, do I need to worry about the new bill? When are you? I'm assuming you evicting the tenant before. If you've served them Section 21 or Section 8 or whatever, and it's already in the process, just continue with that process because you've already started it. If you haven't started it, you've got limited time to start it. So I would start it quick if you are evicting. Do we know how much the license fees? I think it was 800. I'm getting confused now. I know Nottingham is like 930. I think it's 800. Oh, and they give you like a 10% discount if you've got an EPC below a certain level. And I thought, you know what, you can keep your 10%. Or if you're accredited. We are accredited, so if you work through us, we are accredited, so we'll get you the discount. Do we know how much license fees? The ombudsman, no, the ombudsman scheme doesn't exist yet. We belong to an ombudsman scheme, but the landlord ombudsman scheme doesn't exist yet. And I think the ombudsman scheme will be good for private landlords that are not using a letting agent, because then the tenant, if they have a bad landlord, then hopefully they got somewhere to go. But what if he didn't register? Yeah. And then the landlord's register will also only materialize at the end of 2026. I haven't even seen anything, heard anything. Perhaps they're rejuvenating the COVID app. I heard a joke about the COVID app that they're going to rejuvenate that as a landlord register app. And I don't know how often we'll have to renew. I think once you registered on there, you just might have to present new documents every time you've got a gas certificate. They want to make sure. I think I missed one. Can you get insurance cover if the tenant's on DSS housing benefit? Yes, you can. But they will have to have a guarantor scheme. So if they don't have the income, then they'll have to have a guarantor that earns the right amount and passes the referencing, or they purchase one of these guarantor things and they last for about 3 years. So it's actually not bad. Contact me and we can help you. Anything else? Let me just go look through You like my imitation of a tenant? How does a tenant sound? Jackie, the deposit is the same. I can't see the poll anyway, so that's fine. Just contact me if you wanted to book a call. And I think this is me. 2 minutes to go. I am beating my previous record is bad. I think we overran by 10 minutes. And thank you so much for everybody joining. Really a pleasure. And then book that date, the 12th of May. I've checked. It's not football. It's not sport. It's not a religious holiday. It's just a plain old day. It's my sister's birthday. It's Nurses' Day. We can triage all the stuff that's gone wrong on that day, on Nurses' Day. Yes. Oh, thank you for everybody being here. Thank you, Valerie. It was really lovely seeing you. Valerie attends every webinar I present. She's my most loyal attendee. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you again in 3 months' time. Any questions, just email. I think, where is that email? I've got it on every page. There's my email. There's the scan of the code if you want to. And thanks, Bina. And yeah, I was so nervous before I started. I'm glad I didn't forget what I was going to say. And thank you, Clemmy, for helping us in the background. And thanks for Hema as well. Bye. See you again. Bye.